Hey guys, today we've got a couple stories here from X, and I think they're pretty scary stories and a great way to start off this channel. Make sure to like the video and maybe even subscribe if you like this sort of scary story content. But without further ado, let's just begin today's first horror story. I've never told this story to anyone, and I don't really want to tell it again. I have a pounding migraine today, and this thread has kept me good company as I've drifted in and out. I don't really like talking about this time in my life. When I was 10 or 12, I lived with my mother. We were below poverty level poor. We lived up in the mountains around Santa Cruz, California. My mother had a friend that owned a large bit of property up there, and he let us stay in a trailer. The trailer was not much more than a broken down old residence garden. A chain link fence ran around the garden to keep the dog the owner had out, along with other animals. Coyotes and foxes are very common in the area. Also, since my mother dated the owner, we ran into him often. It was built like a tiny house, but it was only a single room on the inside. This room had electricity, and since our actual trailer didn't, I spent a lot of my time there. I was super into video games. There's one thing you should know right now. This small fenced-in area was only a small part of the property, but most of it was heavily forested. Also, I refused to leave the fenced area because the owner's dog was out there. This dog had bitten me more than a few times, and I was always afraid of it. The main thing I was afraid of were things beyond the fence. The fence was tall, at least 7 feet high, and made of this really old chain link that had gone rusted at the bottom. I don't exactly remember how long the trailer was, but it was enough to house furniture, and the thing was big. Now, I tell you all this because I think it's important you understand what kind of scene this was before I really get into the story. We have a fenced-in location that seemed fairly safe. It contained a trailer and a building. Outside that fenced-in location is nothing but nature, nothing else around for miles. My mom was in front of the gate in the fenced area, and a single unpaved road runs from this garden for what seems miles through the area. I brought friends up there to sleep over and hang. We all thought it was pretty cool, like camping out, sort of. Besides, we would get our own room to stay in to play video games all night, because at home, Mom wouldn't let me play past 10 p.m. usually. So we'd get the flashlight, tanned blankets, and it would get really dark out. No city around, and the trailer would not be lit up. There was no bathroom to use around, and given the situation, you wouldn't want to sneak into the dark garden at night to get to the trailer and use it. So, the night of the incident, myself and a friend had gone down to the trailer. My mother had told us to sleep somewhat early, and explained why. Noises like growling at night sometimes. Once, me and a friend were up there and we saw a huge shadow in the trees. Could have been as big as a small bear up a tree, but the tree didn't shake like there was weight in it. The dog also creeped me out, but, any dog would. I was a kid. It was scary. Now I'm a scaredy cat. I always have been, to be honest. I don't know why I even come to X. I have trouble walking through a house if I'm all alone. My friends, however, tend to be more outgoing. Just the kinds of people I get along with. This time, I had a friend over. His name was Jacob. We were staying up all night and playing the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Knuckles on my Sega Genesis on a ratty old television. We started playing as the sun went down, and by the time we were finishing up the game, it was about 2 a.m. That's when it happened. We turned off the game, getting ready to find something else to play. There was a rumbling in the woods behind the room we were in, like somebody was rolling something really heavy around. We heard it harder, because the floor of the room, the trailer in this case, was one multi-layer of cheap wood. Jacob was not really worried about it, but it's not like there's someone else's house or yard right over there. It was forest for miles, and it sounded like someone was constructing something or some shit. Dragging or rolling something really big. Eventually, Jacob convinced me to just play some more games. I agreed on the condition that we turn the volume down so we could hear if something happened. We started playing and I didn't even notice the noise stop because I was getting so engrossed. A couple hours later, Jacob said he had to use the bathroom. I was feeling fine by then, so I was fine when he left the trailer to relieve himself. He was taking a while, so eventually I decided it was my time to check on him. Besides, I could use the bathroom and grab a snack while I was at it. I opened the door to leave and he was just standing at the doorway. Right outside the door, staring. It scared the shit out of me. I asked him what he was doing and he just stood there, blocking the exit. I realized he must have sneaked up to the door because I could hear him walk away from the room, but I hadn't heard him walk back up to it. Then I noticed something. He was absolutely frozen solid. I thought he must have saw something scary or something happened in the room at first. I told him the rules. I was really creeped out. But then I noticed something was on the ground between me and him. Only it wasn't at all what you'd think. It looked like Jacob had been sleeping with his hand on the door itself, partially placed against the wood. It was weird the way it was lying. When I pushed him out of the way a little, his skin felt freezing to the touch. It was a cold night and he had been standing out there for like 30 minutes, so I figured that was to be expected. I made the call to go as quickly as I could over to the trailer. He followed me, like, right on my tail. It was unnerving. I joked a little, saying that he already surprised me by scaring me at the door. The joke's already over. Finally, I mentioned, "Go ahead in." He didn't follow, just stood there. I started to get annoyed because I didn't want to step out into the yard to invite him to go to the bathroom. You know, it being a porta potty, we keep the bathroom door unlocked at all times because it smells. I went inside and tried to open it, but it was locked. A nervous voice came from behind the door. I'm in here." I immediately looked at Jacob, but the door was still open and there was nothing near the bright pitch black night. I freeze in terror. I would have heard the bathroom door open if he had come in behind me and opened the door. I asked whoever was in the bathroom to open the door. At this point I was forgetting about how he got here, and a voice told me to wait. The real Jacob, looking scared, comes back into the light of the trailer while I walk to the door. He looks sickly and worried. Not seeing anything, he closed the door and asked me what was wrong. Jacob was coming out of the bathroom and acting perfectly normal, but a bit confused. I explained what had happened. Jacob said he was just taking a long time in the bathroom. I explained what had happened to him and my mom. Jacob said he was just taking a long time in the bathroom. Neither of them wanted to wait outside of the trailer, no matter how much I insisted. My mom is sure I had just imagined it. Jacob thought I was just trying to prank him. So my mom gets out a big flashlight and walks us back to the room. She tells us to go to sleep, then leaves and goes back to bed herself. Now this room doesn't have any windows or anything, so after a while I began to calm down. The room still scares me, even with Jacob sleeping next to me. So I try to get some sleep, but I can't. Jacob insists he was in the bathroom the whole time, and I'm inclined to believe him because there's no way to really get around without being heard. So I settle down. I'm a little rattled, but I'm thinking I can just sleep it off through the night. Suddenly, the dog starts going nuts right behind us. The room is up against the fence, so the dog must have been like right behind the room on the other side. I felt like I jumped so high I was surprised it didn't hit the roof. Jacob started laughing at me like, "Ha ha ha! Dog barking at a squirrel or some shit. You're shitting yourself." It keeps going like that for a long time though. Suddenly the barking stops and gets replaced by whimpering. We hear the dog run away. There are about 45 seconds of silence before we hear something new. A scratching sound on the back wall of the room. We both try to press ourselves down as silent as we can get. After 50 or 80 minutes of silence, Jacob decides to be brave. He insists he's going to get my mom. I'm telling her, quietly, telling her whatever is going on outside and we're going to go for them. With some kind of adult protection or not. Jacob walks up to the door. I say, No way I'm going out there. Never, ever." He arms himself as best as he can with a tennis racket we had in the room with us. Then he takes a couple deep breaths and swings the door and dashes out. I close it as quick as I can behind him. It's been 30 seconds. I hear a scream. Not long after, the door flies open and he comes back in looking pale as a ghost. He's breathing like he just ran a marathon. His eyes look as big as dinner plates. I ask what's going on like 4 times before he finally starts getting words out. He tells me someone walked out there and he was just walking through the garden as quick as he could. He saw my mom, just standing there. He tried to talk to her. She didn't respond. He kicked some dirt at her. Didn't respond. Everything was creeping him out. He then took a couple more steps towards her. And then he walked into the woods slowly. and turned around with a nervous smile. Then he realized something terrible. He hadn't noticed because of the darkness and how much of a hurry he had been in. My mom was on the other side of the fence. He panicked. I think this room does not lock, and as I explained earlier, this room had no windows. He had been trying to move stuff in front of the door as he told this story, and by the end, I was helping him. In retrospect, whatever was harassing us seemed to be unserious of actually entering the room with the trailer, because the Jacob one didn't come in either time he could have. And this room was not sturdy. So we tried to stack everything we could against the door, thinking like in cartoons we thought this would definitely keep the creature out. For the rest of the night we heard scratches coming from all directions. Not the scratchings from an animal, but it was like dragging for a long while, scraping the wood, then crinkling. At some point we waited. It was too quiet. But then the same exact scratching and dragging like before. Then suddenly a voice. "What's wrong?" Followed immediately by, "Go to sleep." Must have been my mom. The sun must have come up eventually. The scratching eventually stopped. We resumed the morning. Jacob was almost inconsolable. He said his heart was racing when he saw that it was only my mom who had to get the water. I never had any experiences like these again, and eventually we moved away. But that night still haunts me. I still refuse to go out at night unless I'm with a bunch of people, and I will never, ever live in the woods again. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed hearing about this. If you want to make an image and repost, feel free. Probably won't tell this again though. Thanks for listening. So, a few thoughts on this. The entity didn't really do much to them, and there were many things that were left out of detail, like what happened to the dog or what was lying between Chloe and the first encounter. Just a very interesting kind of detail of what was lying there. It seemed like he was sleeping with his hand on the door. I don't know. I don't know exactly what that meant, but kind of an interesting detail that they put in. I don't know what I find creepier, the fact that this entity was just being creepy, like was just being unaggressive, or the fact that, normal kinds of stories where this monster was attacking the people, but in this story it was kind of like the monster was there and was just being weird. It just made the people be weird, the people that it kind of copied, which is kind of creepy just thinking about. And, maybe it doesn't hunt humans, maybe it hunted the dog, and the dog died at the very end, but we don't know that. It doesn't say. I think it's very interesting and a nice rendition of kind of like the Skinwalker or doppelganger kind of monster. Alright, now on to the second story by an anonymous. B16. Be black and have a family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out in the woods for hunting or camping. Down south, cousins suggest that we go out there to camp. I know I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. Collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. We get to the camp and it's obvious something is weird. Air has this weird electric smell like right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it, and unpack and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. Tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say we're camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together. There was a big animal in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says okay. I'm going to stop green texting because this story is fairly long and the format is harder to write in. So we end up playing football and dicking around. There are me, the white kid Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. 5 girls and 6 boys. We all were around 15 to 17. We ended up just dicking the day away and going back to the camp and pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner says he wants to run home. His family's property sits up against my uncle's and asks if he can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says he's going to go with them because it's getting pretty dark, and one of the girls says she's going to walk with them. It's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail toward Tan's property. The rest of us chill and make s'mores, drink, and kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. You could smell it over the smell of the fire we had started. And this really nasty coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it's stopped. I wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty metallic back of your throat smell. We immediately think it's some kind of electrical malfunction or someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers and nothing is on. And we all can smell it. All of a sudden, we can hear people booking down the path toward us and Rooster. Tan and the girl all come running into the clearing out of breath, and they don't even break stride till they all run to the trailer right by where the fire is. We all nope the fuck out of there and get into the trailers. They end up calming down, even Rooster is crying his fucking eyes out at this point. All this while the fire is guttering lower and lower, so my other cousins say fuck it, and are about to go outside to get the generator out of the shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, fuck no. Lock the front door. Ain't nobody else going outside. He's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot and puffy, and his pants are dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to the house. His father said sure, he could go out camping, but to make sure that they were careful on the way back and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before, and that one of their pigs had come up ripped up and half-eaten. They assumed it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they don't usually fuck with live animals. He had gone upstairs and packed his stuff and told his dad they would be okay without the rifle, because coyotes avoid people. So they started walking back toward where we were camping. So Rooster finally stops crying and shaking, the girl already had, but she was just staring at the window with a dumb look on her face. He says they had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they're sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl says that she heard something in the bushes right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing back in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said they had shot at him, and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of them and what a dick he was. He says that's when he realized that the guy was facing away from them, so they keep walking, and they start smelling the nasty coppery ozone smell, and they say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and it's a dude standing in the forest, backward, slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking, and Tan keeps going, I should have taken the fucking rifle. As they're telling the story, the smell is still super strong even inside the cabin. They say that after they started walking faster, that a kind of low gibbering had started coming from out of both sides of the wood, and they started booking it back to the trailer. They say that after they started walking faster, that a kind of low gibbering had started coming from out of both sides of the wood, and they started booking it back to the trailer. The girl said she had flashed her flashlight out into the woods to the side of them, and had seen something jerking itself through the woods in the track. They had just flat out ran as hard as they could. From the light from the campfire, they saw something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the trail. So we're out in the fucking woods, and we're at this point assuming it's some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin Junior starts going on about how he went to school with some native kid that was telling him about the goat man or some shit. We promptly tell him to shut the fuck up, because we don't need any spooky talk right now. But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking goat man and we're in his woods and blah blah blah. Now at the time, I had never heard of goat man or any of that. But then a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had a menon for a roommate, and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift and he gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, and it's bad mojo to even talk about it, and even worse if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16, so my cousin is going, the goat man's going to get in and fucking get us. The girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are all fucking trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or if it's some animal. So all of a sudden the smell goes away. Like, to this day, I haven't experienced anything like it. Like, usually smells fade away or get less. It just literally was there for 1 second and then not the other. So after an hour, making it around 9 or 10, we've stopped shitting bricks enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figured it was just some assholes trying to fuck with us, so we don't go back home because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. Nothing else weird happens that night, and we stay another night. and for the main part of the night, nothing happens. At about 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. As someone is finishing some spooky story, I don't remember what about, the smell comes back. And it's so fucking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. And I say we should get inside. This isn't right. We should have just fucking left. We all go back inside and we're standing around and my cousin keeps it going on about how it's the goat man. And my cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up. All the while I'm just feeling that something is wrong and I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up sitting in there for a while. The smell is just as strong and we're all huddled in this camper. We ended up cooking brats for everybody because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 12 in there. We eat about 3 of the packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everybody a hot dog. I get mine. After a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one. He starts grumbling about how the fuck do I get 2 and everybody else only got 1. And I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him that everybody only got 1 because there are only 12 brats. If he wants more, he should go and cook some more. That's when the girl that had been with Rooster and myself earlier starts screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get out!" She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin, standing up and saying, "What the fuck is wrong?" Me and him both glance around the room and then I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin and the girl runs out with us. The other cousin books it out of the cabin. One of my cousin friends asks what the fuck is wrong and I start counting us, and there's only 11 now. I shit you not. My cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin, but being that everybody didn't really know each other well, nobody had really noticed the whole fucking time, but there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I had kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you're just dicking around and having a good time, you don't sweat the small shit? And you don't always keep track of certain stuff. But I'm dead sure that someone else had been in the trailer with us. And that they had been there for at least a fucking day, eating with us. And what makes it worse is, I could figure out which one, because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person / the goat man. The girl kept praying to Jesus and we're all sitting outside. Eventually we get big ass sticks and go back in the cabin. There's nobody in there. We count again. There's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened, and the girl says that she realized too, and that when he was about to say something, the person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard and leaned over toward her and said something she couldn't understand. So we were pretty much scared as fuck and we huddled together, and then I fall asleep. When I wake up, the sun is just coming up and half the people are asleep and the half are packing our shit up. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up. And some people think that we're just fucking around and still want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name was Kira, the one that the goat man had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks it was something bad, and she says she just wants to go home and she doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split people up, and the 4 that want to go can go, and that I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin and it's my uncle's and I have to lock it up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this shit seriously and I definitely don't want to be out in the woods for another night. So I spend the rest of the day trying to convince other people. Now 4 girls and 4 guys to bet the fuck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and says he's gonna be back. So there are just 7 of us left in this trailer. It's about 4 o'clock. At around 5, he hasn't made it back yet and we're extremely fucking antsy. And the only reason I stopped begging them to go back was because he went to go get a gun. It's about 5:30 or so when the one cousin that did stay says that the girl Kira is outside. We all look outside and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, she was so fucking scared. Why the hell would she come back? And I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time the coppery spell has been gone, but now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them and everybody. These are the people that wanted to stay in the fucking woods after we had the goddamn goat man in our midst, are laughing at me and asking, did I set this up to scare them? I'm looking at them like, I'm not fucking bullshitting you all right now. I asked them, why the fuck would I play like that? So one of the girls goes outside to get Kira. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kira starts heaving. I don't know how to describe it. Sort of like someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. And it was the fact that I thought this would make me realize that there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was like later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too. And you could usually hear big ass geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chittering. So I step out the door and tell her to come back in the fucking trailer right goddamn now. She backs up into the trailer and we lock the fucking door and pull down all the shades except one and put someone there in a chair to watch her. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. The guy turns to say that she's still there and there's a huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The bang is super fucking loud. So now my cousin is holding one of the girls and the other two are kind of giggling with nervous laughter. And me and the other two guys are shitting bricks. Then we hear Tan. He's screaming, "Let me the fuck in! Stop fucking playing!" So we go over to the door and open it and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl. Mind you, he said it was not Kira, standing there. When he had gone to the edge of the clearing, she had turned toward him with this slack-jawed look and just stared him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing towards the camp. He said it wasn't until he was almost halfway to the trailer he had realized that she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire and without him even seeing her move, she had been turning and basically inching closer. He said he just ran out the rest of the way to the cabin thinking it would be open. Then he got to the door and it was locked. He turned and it was about half the distance to the door. He looks around the room and then gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know there are only 6 of you in here, right?" I get that feeling where your stomach drops in your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where. And then when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it had just slipped right back in. We looked out the window and there was nobody out there. So we recount everyone. And then basically, I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier. And everybody says 8. I say, "Well, how many are there now?" They all do the count and then realize there are only 7 people now in the cabin. So Tan had brought back a couple boxes of ammo and his rifle. And he had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the first because he didn't think his dad would believe him if he said it was Goat Man. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours and that in the morning we can all go back to his place and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really fucking terrified, but I at least feel better because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is if it comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's getting really scared and that I'm not funny. He keeps telling her that I'm not that kind of person, and she says, "Well, how do we know the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goat Man, how do we know that this is the real Tanner and that Goat Man just didn't kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun?" So we fucking get into a huge argument about this where me and Tan are like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least someone has been sneaking themselves into our fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us. And at worst, it's something bad in the forest fucking with us. One of the girls is crying and saying she doesn't want to go right now. And we're trying to tell her that's a no fucking go because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent, so we turn it off at about the time that Tan's cousin shows up. At this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer and we whisper to Tan, asking if he's sure that's his cousin, and he says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp, then walks in. He kind of glances at all of us and looks a little confused. He says, "Where's your other little buddy at? I figured she would meet me up at the cabin. Is she a little bit slow or something?" And had been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelled like bloody and hot pans all the way up the trail. We all fucking nope. Betamax and to ask him what the fuck he's talking about. He had come down the same trail as Tan had been using and that he'd come up on one of you guys' buddies, standing in the middle of the trail looking at him slack-jawed. He had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was just look at him. Then she smiled at him and he said that he kept walking. But she couldn't seem to keep up with him and kept lagging a little behind him. He said he asked her, was she hurt or something? And did she need help? And she had continued to stare. He said eventually he had been walking and had turned around a bend in the trail. When he turned around, he went back to see if she was okay. The trail was empty. He had assumed she had taken some sort of shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We tell him the whole story of what's going on, and he nopes the fuck out. Like, I expected him to say we were full of shit. He was like 19, I think. But he just listened and then sat down on the couches in the living room. He says, when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it had kind of weirded him the fuck out, so he tried to keep her in front of him. But no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little bit behind. This weird smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. He said eventually it got really strong, and she had said something really low that he didn't catch. And he turned around, and she had been right the fuck on him, and he stepped back from her. It was at this point he asked her if she was okay, and if she wanted him to carry her back the rest of the way, and she just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance, because she was off to the side of where he had put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point we know this shit's real unless Tan is playing a joke, which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. So they load up their rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. To this fucking day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's some huge pranks that my cousins played on me, and just never revealed, so I would shit for the rest of my life. At around 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty, gross blood smell, like cooking blood and singed hair. Tan and his cousin, Reese, get the fuck up instantly and grab their rifles. There's like a half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk. And it says in this halting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me the fuck in and stop fucking playing." It made my nuts creep up against my body. One of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus. It was so fucking obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence, and that's some shit that I never realized until that moment, but all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm to talking. This shit didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. YouTube those cats. That's what the fuck it sounded like outside the door. So no, I'm in full-on terror mode. And we keep yelling outside, "Who is it? Stop fucking around, man." And it just keeps saying, "In," or "Let me the fuck in," for almost 15 minutes. It sounded like this almost, only not funny. It's a youtube.com link. Sorry for being on a tangent, but if you can't imagine how this shit sounded, then you can't imagine how fucked up the whole situation was. So then the smell goes away for a while, and for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around the woods and shit. And every couple of minutes it comes back and knocks at the door and says something. Finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 in the morning right now. Reese says, "Man, fuck this," and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." He fires 2 more times, and from the woods right up against the river across from the trailer, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like I seriously have never heard any shit like that. And you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into the tree line and then starts backing into the house. We lock the door. We can hear the shit keening and screaming. Reese says something had come out of the bushes, super low to the ground, crawling toward the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much that was how the rest of the night went. It literally was screaming constantly for the next 2 hours, and we could hear shit moving out into the tree line. But it never came back up to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in the chair, watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this, and he told me 2 days later, after the whole thing was over. He said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped, and he had been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom, then just lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He just assumed it was one of us and he had nodded off. Then he said he kind of realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be asleep, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin. He basically didn't want to try to shoot at the fucking thing in the cabin and have it kill us all then and there, or have Reese wake up and start shooting and then we kill ourselves. So he just stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing, or heave like it was laughing, but then it would lay back down. So the story closes pretty weak, because from my perspective, nothing happened. We woke up, and I noticed that Tana was a little jittery, that he was avoiding looking at all of us, but we ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin and said he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys to just start walking and he'd catch up, which I didn't really want to fucking do. We got a little bit up the path and then he came running up, and basically we just jogged back to his house and his cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan had gone back to lock up and look in there. He said there was a window that we were too stupid to lock and there was no screen on it. The window was fucking up when he went in there. I'm guessing he had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then getting in among us. He walked with us all the goddamn way back to his house, and then he said it lagged behind us, and then looked him dead in the eyes and walked into the woods. I gotta say, that is one hell of a story. So many cuss words, maybe some unneeded, but wow, that was kind of creepy, honestly. Just like imagining that situation. While I was reading it, I was getting paranoid, and I was like looking around my room after reading. Yeah, that's terrifying. Just someone that blends in with the group so easily, and just the reveal that the window was open at the end. Oof, man. If I was in that situation, holy shit, I would cry, honestly. If I counted and then one person just looks off that I didn't recognize, and it's just like an extra part of the group, oh my gosh, I'm getting out of there. If it's not even a monster, if it's just some random guy we don't know joining us for camping in the middle of the woods, I'm getting the fuck out of there. Are you joking me? Anyways, that was a very, very fun story to read. A nice twist. I wonder what would have happened if they opened the door. Like, is it Goatman unaggressive whenever he's in a different form? Because I mean, he was in the group for so long and nothing happened, right? Only the fact that the girl was like kind of assaulted by him by like putting his hand on her leg and like whispering some shit. And I was thinking that's how he marks them and like changes into them, because he said that, or the Goatman said that to her, and then he was her the next day, right? Sitting outside the camp. So yeah, that's fucking terrifying, honestly. And I'm still paranoid actually reading this. Even though it's like I'm not reading this in the dark. It's daytime. It's not daytime. It's nighttime, but my room is brightly lit. Yeah, that's pretty scary. That's a very, very good story, honestly. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. That's it for today's episode of Scary Skinwalker Goatman kind of stories from 4chan and X. Thank you guys for watching. If you like my voice or this channel, please like and subscribe, and come back maybe next week where we'll do something different, some different theme and some different stories. And maybe even though it's Christmas time, you might enjoy a little bit of a creepy story. So I hope you come back. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.